Hi there. Tonight is a beautiful night. I've just finished my work, so I thought I'd bring you out to West Perthshire. We're looking down on Strathearn. This is a beautiful part of the country and very historic. Out of the top of my head, I can think of 3 battles that were fought within 5 or 6 miles from this point. The Battle of Mevin, the Battle of Tippermuir, and Duplin. Also, around this area, there was a royal palace built in the 9th century by Kenneth MacAlpine, one of the earliest kings of Scotland. So as you can see, it's a bonny place, but also a very historic place. So today I'm going to take you out to a wee hamlet called Aberdargie. And Aberdargie sits just 2 or 3 miles to the west of the city of Perth. Aberdargie is just a hamlet, just a few scattered houses. And I'm going to take you to the church of Aberdargie. It's a beautiful looking building. It's quite an unusual church. I've not really seen too many like this in my travels. But the thing that interests me is not actually in the church, but in the churchyard. There's a very interesting grave of one of Scotland's great heroes from the past, a man called William Oliphant. Oliphant was a local man, and he was one of Scotland's heroes during our wars of independence, when Scotland was fighting for its right to be an independent, free nation. We were being attacked by Edward I of England, who wanted to incorporate Scotland into his realm and turn us into a sort of shire of the English. And William's final resting place was here, amongst the ancient graves in Aberdargie. We'll go and find the grave of this great Scottish hero, and then I'll take you on a tour round the graveyard once I've told you Oliphant's story. Just at the side of the church are the modern graves, where people are still buried to this day. But if you walk down the hill a bit, you come to the ancient graves, where people have been buried from the sort of middle to late 1700s onwards. And the grave here in the corner is the grave we're looking for, that of William Oliphant. It's quite a plain looking grave for such a hero. It's quite fitting that at this time of year with some bluebells in front of the grave. It's a very tranquil and peaceful place. At the back of the grave there's a bit of a gorge and a burn runs through, so you can constantly hear the sound of running water. Who was William Oliphant, and why was he so famous? Well, the details are carved on the gravestone. It says that this stone has been put there to the memory of Sir William Oliphant of Aberdargie, whose brave defence of Stirling Castle was one of the most stirring and important events of Scottish history. That's quite a big claim to fame. So was he as important as the grave makes out? Well, this is his story. By 1304, Scotland was on the verge of total defeat. Edward I of England had captured, humiliated, stripped our king, John Balliol, King John I, of his crown and forced him into exile. All the Scottish leaders had surrendered to the English king. Only a few held out against him, one of which was William Wallace, who was hiding in Selkirk Forest. The other was William Oliphant, who held one of the only castles controlled by the Scots, the castle at Stirling. The castle dominates the landscape. It controls the main crossing of the River Forth. The land to the west at that time would be marshland, unpassable. So to control Stirling Castle was vital for traffic moving between north and south, and it was held by William Oliphant and his garrison. The English king was desperate to capture the castle. He turned up on May 1304 with an army to lay siege to the castle. He gathered 13 siege engines. Oliphant, who was described by the English chroniclers as a wise and tireless soldier, held the castle against the King of England. As the siege continued, food and supplies were prevented from being brought to the garrison at the castle. Edward was busy organising his troops. He did put himself in danger. At one point, a crossbow fired from the castle pierced his armour, but did not wound him. When it was removed, he spat at the bolt. He held it aloft and threatened to hang the man who shot it at him. On another occasion, his horse was knocked off its legs as he sat on it by a large rock thrown from the castle. During the siege, the English king asked who held the castle against him, as Scotland had no king. John Balliol was in exile. The commander, Oliphant, replied that he held the castle for the lion, referring to the royal flag of Scotland, the rampant lion, indicating that he held the castle for the Scottish crown. As these siege engines hurled massive stones into the castle, the garrison inside hid in the cellars. Edward had converted a nearby house, removing a wall and filling the hole with glass, so his queen and her ladies could watch the siege in comfort. With no hope of being relieved, the Scots sought terms and offered to surrender, but Edward refused, for he had brought a massive siege engine called the War Wolf, and he wanted to try it out. So the Scots were not allowed to leave the castle until this massive war machine had thrown rocks into the castle.
Explore Castle Menzies after dark.
Is it really haunted?
Is it really haunted?
Book now to find out.
If you dare.
Finally, the Scots were allowed to surrender. They filed out the castle and approached the English king barefoot and begged for their lives. Edward threatened to disembowel and hang them, but the Queen, she pleaded for the lives of these Scots, and all were spared. About 50 of them were sent to English prisons. One English deserter, who was found amongst the garrison of the castle, was hanged. Later in the war, Oliphant fought for the English. He was a captain of the garrison at Perth and was attacked in January 1313 by Scotland's king, Robert the Bruce, who captured Perth. So was Oliphant this great Scottish patriot if he fought also for the English during the Wars of Independence? Well, I think I better explain something. We Scots never choose the easy option. When we were fighting our Wars of Independence against one of the mightiest countries in the Christian world at that time, England, we were also fighting our own civil war. You see, when Alexander III of Scotland died childless, the next in line to the throne was his granddaughter, but she also died. Various families could also put in a claim to this vacant throne, the largest being the Balliols, who were supported by the biggest family in Scotland, the Cummins, and the Bruces, who had their support. The Scots, on the verge of civil war, asked Edward of England to act as a judge and decide who had the best right to the throne, and he chose King John Balliol. But as Edward chose who was to be the king, he demanded all the claimants acknowledge him as overlord or high king, and he used this power to dominate in Scotland's affairs, eventually demanding King John send troops for Edward's invasion of France. Instead, John signed an alliance with France, and that's what kicked off the Wars of Independence. So, men who supported the now exiled John Balliol were foes or enemies of Robert the Bruce and could not support him either politically or military. I once did a talk about the Wars of Independence in the town of Crieff in Perthshire. I had to point out that if we had been alive at the time, we would have been fighting against Robert the Bruce, for the Earl of Strathearn would be our feudal lord, and he was an enemy of Bruce and supported Balliol and the Cummins. The great Robert the Bruce, one of my all-time heroes, and the victor at the Battle of Bannockburn, which secured Scotland's independence, also fought on both sides during the wars. Despite the fact that William Oliphant fought for the Scots and the English, in my opinion, he is still one of the great heroes of Scottish history. And if you ever get a chance to come out here to Aberdargie, I would recommend you come and see the grave of this remarkable man. If you've enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe. You might like to take one of our dark history tours, ghost tours, or paranormal investigations that are held in Perthshire, Glasgow and Stirling. If so, please visit our website, which is www.historyandhorrortours.com. Thank you.